Welcome to the Calder Farmstead.
Now the Ice Hawks back out to center in transition. Carlson with Quenneville 2-on-1. Right when Carlson comes, Quenneville scores!
Here's a chance for Garrett. Fight, he scores! Off the face-off! Up in Zeminger. Pulled back to Werenski. Has it, shoots one, bounces off a man. 5 seconds left. Werenski, another jam on the shot, turning and firing. They go! Scores! They score! Now they catch each other and they both go right over the top. Matching rights to one another. McDermott gets the helmet off of Cassie.
And now with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out right side with Bear. Looks like cutting to the net. Bear will score!
And here are your hosts, Cece and Sean.
Hello and greetings from the mile-high city of Denver, Colorado.
And Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Welcome to the Calder Farmstead podcast, episode number 25, the quarter century mark for Friday, April 2nd, 2021. If you were hoping for a podcast detailing proper bovine tagging and branding, we are not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast, and my name is Cece Hockley.
And I'm Sean O'Brien.
And as always, we thank you for tuning in with us.
If this is your first time hearing Cece and I talk about hockey, we're going to preview some of the matchups from the upcoming weekend in the AHL for you. We both watched a lot of games. We're going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break it down. If that's new to you, you may want to head over to our podcast feed or YouTube channel, wherever you're listening to us from. Scroll all the way to the bottom there and check out episode 0. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model we use, or new to some of the newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries, go check that out so you'll better be able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes, and let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes today trying to figure out if those Charlotte Checkers jerseys were for real. So why not spend a little more time with us talking hockey?
More like 20 seconds for me. Gosh, that was as soon as that graphic designer came on the screen, just, dressed all flamboyant and eccentric and everything. I'm like, oh my God, this is a elongated April Fool's joke. I can't believe it. But anyway, yeah, Charlotte trolling us with the logo rebrand. And anyway,
I mean, when you're sitting out a season, you get bored. These are the things that happen.
These are the things that happen.
I thought it was silly, but you know what? Whatever. I'm fine with it.
The conversation that Sean and I had off camera before episode 24 about teams that needed a rebrand or that we'd like to see rebranded, that kind of got my hopes up. Like, this is a new identity. They've got a new affiliation with the Panthers, and this is turning a new leaf. But then, I realized that it was a joke, but I think the logo actually looked half decent.
Yeah.
Sean,
too clip art for me.
A little too what?
A little too clip art like.
That's fair. Well, hey, let's talk about teams that are playing this season. And first and foremost, we've got the Iowa Wild, and picking up one of their collegiate signings now that the collegiate season rather, is over for a good number of teams. 4 remain, but one of those teams that has ended their season, one of the teams, let me rephrase that. One of the teams that is picking up a player from the collegiate ranks because their season has ended. You'll start to see these drafted players from the NCAA. They're going to start signing their entry-level contracts and heading to the pros. And in this case, Matthew Boldy, the Minnesota Wild's first rounder from 2019, is headed to Iowa. That was a roundabout way of getting to it. But hey, Sean, what can we expect to see from Boldy for those unfamiliar with his game?
A lot of good things. Given the dynamic of the team, I think he's going to fit in nicely. He's been a terror in college for Boston College, and there's a lot to like and some that needs improvement, as with any player in hockey. Nobody is perfect, not even McDavid. But let's start with the positives. He's huge, and while he's not overly physical, he's able to win battles along the boards, but his hands in tight are what make him special. His ability to create space in closed quarters and find passing lanes that others simply don't. Off the puck, he's also really good. He understands positioning within a system very well, and doesn't make a lot of the basic rookie mistakes you'd expect to see from other similar young players. His shot isn't elite per se, but it's still very good. I'd be shocked to see if he ever scores 30 goals as a pro, but I think low 20s as well within his ability, even at the AHL level. His playmaking and hockey IQ, though, are his biggest strengths. He's creative, especially in dangerous areas like behind the net, and he always seems to be able to find passing lanes on the power play in a kind of Sam Annis fashion. So the Iowa Wild fans who remember those days of Annis just throwing pucks from one area to the next that didn't seem like they had a prayer, but somehow just find a lane and get through. I think Matthew Boldy, once he gets up to speed of pro hockey, should be able to make passes like that. On the negative side, he has average skating speeds. And yes, that's not a huge, critique, but he has good edge work, but he doesn't have that high gear that can separate him from defenders. I think that speed limits his effectiveness on the rush, although he's still very good there as he is good in space and has good creativity. Overall, I don't think his skating holds him back from a career as a top 6 NHL talent, but it's probably what separates him from the class above him. Regardless, he's a very good get for the Iowa Wild and can help take the weight off guys like Duar, Dumont, and Mayhew to score every night for the Wild to win. They have been lacking kind of a second line of player that can help chip in and take the pressure off those guys, because it felt like for a while, if they weren't doing the offense, nobody was. So Matthew Boldy can definitely help lighten that load as well as do some dirty work on his own.
Very nice. And Iowa actually starting to heat up a little bit, at least, earning points in their last 3 games and 2 of those games being wins. So Boldy joining the squad and just in time for Iowa to face off against Texas tomorrow. Well, Friday, April 2nd and Saturday, April 3rd. And we will be picking that in the speed round towards the tail end of the show.
I don't know if they're going to have Boldy in time for that series based on quarantine protocols, travel, and, he probably wants to at least go on a nice little bar tour after his college career is over. But I think he'll probably be there next weekend at minimum, given, I'm imagining there's a quarantine and some testing and that kind of stuff involved. But I think he's going to be a big impact for them.
Sean, I wouldn't be surprised if we did see him this weekend, because the fact that Canada's quarantine has been reduced to 7 days, and granted, that is international border, and that has nothing to do with going from, they're playing in, where was BC playing playoffs? Was it in Grand Forks in North Dakota? See, I can't remember now, but
I honestly don't remember off the top of my head. I know that the Frozen Four is taking place behind me,
yes.
But I don't know where the semifinals round was. I was not able to get that on, Hulu or Netflix or, Amazon Prime or anything like that. Not a sponsor of the show, by the way.
No, none of those 3 are, unfortunately. But no, one of the regional finals, multiple locations for sure. But, with rapid testing and just with being in the United States, I would imagine that it could be a possibility we see him this weekend. So I guess
could be. We haven't, despite my repeated requests to the AHL, they actually haven't sent me every single guideline and testing thing that they do, which, yeah, I know, sad face, but I'm assuming that some of that is going to be, a couple-day quarantine with some rapid test negatives and stuff like that. But I don't know. Like I said, it's 50-50 at worst. So.
Sure. All right. Well, like I said, we will talk about Iowa and Texas very briefly in the speed round. So hang with us. We are going to go into our first divisional series here, and we're going to bring on the Sin Bin's Jack Murray, another great AHL writer from that website that we used to darken their doors. So hang tight. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. We shift from Iowa to talk about the Groundhog Day division, the Atlantic division, where all 3 teams play each other 12 times each. So yay. Lots of familiarity breeding contempt and lots of Providence Bruins success. So bringing on another sin binner because there's just so many good quality AHL writers, AHLers covering their teams there at the Sin Bin. I wonder who helped with that. But I digress. He covers the Providence Bruins for the Sin Bin, and I'm not going to toot my horn so much because he puts in all the work and he does a great job over there. Welcome back. Well, welcome to the first time in the Calder Farmstead iteration of Sean and I's podcast journey, Mr. Jack Murray. Jack, welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. And yeah, late notice. It it was day of, and so yeah, we appreciate you coming on with little. Well, I say little to no, but you've been covering Providence. You're prepared.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the process of doing a column on the P Bruins and their success and how to measure it when they're only playing two teams. And my intention was to write it after they played against Utica on Saturday, but so
oops,
yeah.
Utica doesn't play games.
Yeah, so we'll see. I'll probably formulate it before the next game and then kind of write a recap from there. But that was disappointing to see.
Yeah, I mean, Utica, we had Cody Severtson on from Comets Harvest, and we had such good analysis, covered that weekend and everything, and then nothing. And Cody even predicted one of the games was going to be canceled because of COVID. So that was the first time we've ever had a guest on the show predict a game get canceled. But when you've only played 9 games, you're the only team in the AHL that's played single-digit games this season at this point. Then that turned out to be an accurate pick from Cody. But I digress. We're not talking about the Utica Comets right now. We are talking about the Providence Bruins. And a name that came up that both you and Sean were talking about before we started recording was Cameron Hughes. So Sean, take the floor first, and then Jack can kind of bookend it a little bit here, and we'll talk about Mr. Hughes.
Yeah, the last time we talked about Cam Hughes, I said that I didn't think he'd continue on his scoring path that he was on, and his points were more good fortune than repeatable process. That was February 19th. He had 3 games played, 1 goal, 2 assists for 3 points. Since then, 13 games played, 3 goals, 10 assists, 13 points. Currently 1.74 point shares, good for the 93rd percentile on the model with a first-line forward grade. So yeah, he really showed me who was boss. Also pointing out that maybe a sample size of 3, not the greatest to assess. Jack, what have you seen from Cam Hughes that has made this sustainable as an offense, as his offensive production, and in general from him? What have you seen?
Yeah, well, when looking at a hockey player from a very general standpoint, anyone can notice when someone has the puck pretty much the entire time they're on the ice. He always has it. And he only has 4 goals on the year right now to go along with his 12 assists for 16 points in 16 games. And that describes his play style. He's a distributor. He finds people open. He gives them the puck. He's the, let's say, the quarterback of not only power play situations, but just in general 5-on-5 play. If he has the puck, there's a good chance that the puck's going to go into the back of the net or be a quality chance. That's why he's putting up these points. It's not necessarily overwhelming offensive talent. It's a lot of it is mental IQ, knowing where the puck should be, knowing how to distribute it to the guy that's low and has a potential shot on net. He's really grown in that role as the season's gone along. And it's really nice to see his development. He's definitely become a leader on the ice, and just knowing the fact that when he has the puck, there's a good chance it's going to land on someone's stick who can put it in the back of the net is a really nice thing to see.
Jack, going from the skaters real quick to the goaltending of the Providence Bruins. Now, there's been 3 different starting goalies in the last 4 games, and I remember that when we were under the In the Corners banner, that we had you on, and you were really high on Jeremy Swayman. And that has stuck with me ever since we had you on the program back then. And also you had a poster behind you, at least the last time we had you on, with the Smiths. And I was going to mention something about that or Morrissey or something, and I never got the chance to. So there's my obligatory Smiths Morrissey There it is. There it is.
Okay.
That's the one. Yeah. I was like, where did it go? I see the Clash London Calling. I see your New England's Patriots banner there. But yeah, so I had to make a comment about that because,
Sure.
yeah, New England. Sean's a Bills fan. I'm a Broncos fan. But not the point of this. Let's talk goaltending again. Sorry, getting sidetracked a little bit there. It happens. But 3 different starting goaltenders in the last 4 games. They won 3 of them. The loss that occurred wasn't really Swayman's fault. And, you know, the most important position in hockey, and despite all of the roster chaos, which, you know, a lot of AHL clubs are experiencing because, you know, the NHL club is cycling goaltenders from the taxi squad and everything like that, and, you know, wants to get guys that get playing time, and, you know, they haven't really missed a beat. So all of that said, Jack, what do you attribute to the success in the goalie depth chart there for the AHL and, well, for the P Bruins down there in the AHL?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'll start with Callum Booth because I've obviously only seen the 1 game from him, but when he was named as the starter, not necessarily a knock on him, but it was the fact that they had less skaters that game. They were only able to fill 3 full lines and on the offensive side, and then they had a goalie who hadn't seen AHL action all year. In my head, I was like, okay, this is probably going to be a tough game for Providence, and Booth played great in that game. He made over 30 saves. He really picked right up from where Swayman and Vladar were finding success. And I think that just really shows how having someone like Tuukka Rask up with Boston, having success for such a prolonged amount of time, having a veteran backup like Halak with Boston, and then them helping these young guys really get into the culture of the team, as with training camps and just overall organizational development. It's a really good place to be a goalie, is with the Bruins organization. With Booth in that game, I was pleasantly surprised. With Swayman, I expected it, and with Vladar, I expected it because I've seen Swayman at the collegiate level for a couple of years now, and he was always a formidable opponent for Hockey East teams. I remember watching him against Northeastern a couple of years ago in the Hockey East tournament, and he was the main reason UMaine really competed hard in that game. I also know he was unbelievable against Boston College in that time and really hit on the map. So when I knew he was in the Bruins organization, I figured he would rise up pretty quickly. And he's a very consistent, really on the money goalie where he may let up 2 goals, but he's going to keep you in the game, basically. Like, you always know what you're going to get from him. He's sound positionally, he's quick, he gets the job done, and he's never going to throw you in a situation where you have no chance to win. Obviously, he had an outstanding record going into that loss, which he very much deserved. But regardless, you just know that he's ready for this AHL time, and he's up to the par, and he's honestly knocking on the door of the NHL. With Dan Vladar, he's a much different goalie than Swayman, because I wouldn't necessarily say he shows all the typical intangibles of being just a solid all-around goaltender. He has a lot of speed, which is crazy to see from a 6'6" large goaltender. You would think he would not be the quickest. He's really quick going post to post in the crease. That's what I've really noticed from him. And I believe that maybe he has some weaknesses in his game, but he has a lot of natural talent that kind of makes up for it. And I've noticed that with him, he gets more shutouts than Swayman. So they're a really good tandem. And I think that's something that can go on within the organization towards the NHL, as they're developing 2 goalies that seem to work well together and give the teams a different look. Because when you're playing Bridgeport and Hartford every other game, they're going to notice holes in your goaltending. They're going to know where they can score. So to have 2 goalies that are so different in play style really messes with the other team, and that's why teams are struggling to get points early on. I mean, in the game on Wednesday, I believe, the first period, Providence didn't get a shot on net, and Bridgeport got about 9. And Swayman was the difference in the game. They didn't get a goal in the first period. Providence ended up winning the game in overtime. But when you outshoot a team 9-0 in a period, you need to get a couple goals on the board. And the fact that Swayman was able to keep the puck out of the net shows how this team builds from the goalie on out. And that's why they've been successful, because they know that they're going to get a solid effort out of their goaltender every night. And then that gives the players confidence that they just have to put 1 or 2 goals in the net, and they'll probably win the game.
And it's probably helps the organization too that they have 2 young goaltenders that look like they could be, another good tandem like they have in Rask and Halak right now. And Rask and Halak are, starting to get up there in age where the point of, people have been openly wondering if Rask only has, a season or 2 left as he's getting to be my age. And I know what that feels like, from even a hard day of sitting behind a desk all day. I come home and I'm exhausted. I can only imagine what it's like being an actual productive person. I do want to talk about the schedule real quick here, though. So the AHL has been a hodgepodge of, travesty when it comes to scheduling, when you'll see, Manitoba just played a 3-4, which was not unusual for them. They have 17 straight home games that they're in the middle of that stand right now, which is, genuinely insane. Wow. There have been a lot of teams that have been playing back-to-backs, and then you get over to the Groundhog Day division, and it's like, oh yeah, they don't play any back-to-backs. They have a game every 4 or 5 days, but it's a kind of different problem to have. Whereas when you're playing that often, it's easy to get in the flow of games. You just have to kind of battle fatigue and exhaustion and burnout. Whereas this, in the opposite stand, where they're, days and days between games, and they're playing the same team every other day or every other game, that has to make it difficult to get into the flow of the season. And yet that hasn't been the case watching that team at all. They come out and play hard and play sharp game in and game out. Why do you think that the P Bruins seem to have kind of floated above what seems like an easy lull to fall into of just, I would imagine slow starts would have plagued them because there's so much time between games. They're sitting, against 2 teams that they know they're more talented than. What makes you think that, what gives you the impression that the P Bruins have had the right group, the right tools to make this work so far and to come in and day out?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm going to just pull up an example which describes why they've been successful, and that would be a player like Robert Lantosi, who has definitely been someone who's provided a lot of depth scoring for them. I bring him up because when looking at the starting lineups each day, I've seen him start on the 4th line, and I've seen him start on the 1st line. So basically, they have guys all throughout the lineup that are talented to play on any line. They can play bottom 6, they can play top 6, they can play power play, they can play penalty kill. When they have games where they haven't played in a while, they're able to look at the morning skate and say, all right, Oscar Steen is flying, or Anton Bleed is flying, and let's get them in a prominent position. And they can do that, and they can make sure they match up well against these teams. And, another thing that has to do with it is the fact that they're never playing a back-to-back, so they're able to get used to this pace of playing every couple days. And I've noticed that there was one period where I believe they played a Saturday and then a Monday, or maybe a Friday and a Sunday. And I was thinking, okay, they're probably going to come out kind of sluggish, but they were way quicker than I believe it was Hartford they played after having played Bridgeport. And it was just because they were more into the game. They were more focused. And I believe they've been fortunate with that, where they haven't had as many long rests where the teams had a short rest. And while you think they would work against the team with the short rest, sometimes it actually helped because they're more focused, as you mentioned earlier. So I feel like looking towards the schedule as the year is ending, they're going to be facing some teams who have had games where they've had shorter rest, and that might work against them. But as you mentioned, how the P Bruins are more talented than these 2 teams, that really comes to the depth. And knowing that you have more depth than these teams, knowing that you can throw a different lineup at them each time and have a different guy who carries the pace really makes it so the teams are always guessing at what to attack, guessing at what to defend against. And that's, I think, a big reason why they've been able to find success against these teams.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy just how you can play 2 teams, and it just leaves me at a loss for words. Just how, like you said, it's not just figuring out the goaltender; it's figuring out tendencies in regards to specific skaters and defenders, and it's just amazing how. And I know Providence, and I even predicted 19 or 20 wins for Providence this year because of the fact that Hartford and Bridgeport looked so abysmal, at least on paper. And but they keep doing it, and it's, they have what, a 12-3-1 record currently.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, that's 19 wins is still possible. Come
Still
on.
possible.
We'll see if they can rattle off 7 in a row. Go ahead, Sean.
And I think too, it's interesting because they are playing two teams that, I mean, stylistically they are overmatching because they are far and away the fastest team on the ice in every game that they play. And that they are the most talented team on the ice in every game they play, that it makes it really hard to kind of figure out, like, okay, if this were a normal season and we were going to play, a Calder Cup playoffs, Providence plays Chicago at some point. How do I like that matchup? I don't know. I feel like, and you kind of alluded to that you're writing on this, so maybe you don't have to tip your hand the whole way, but like from a league-wide perspective, like I think Providence has looked really good, but it's so hard to find like a good measuring stick because just don't play other teams. And I don't think Hartford is actually as bad as their record. Bridgeport might be, but I think Hartford is probably a little bit better than that. But because you're, slapping them up against a team that's just going to skate laps around them, I don't feel like that does them any justice. But with Providence, I'm like, if I had to put them against Chicago, Henderson, Bakersfield, who else is doing really well? Texas, Hershey, Syracuse. Like I feel like I would just, take some random guesses at it because it's so hard to put that up. What would you say is your inkling of how good this team actually is in the greater scope of the league?
I agree. It's hard to tell. I mean, I've been struggling with that myself because I watched a Laval Rocket game. I think they were playing Belleville a couple weeks ago, and I felt like they were at least up to the P Bruins level, if not a little better. And, that was early in the season, so I don't know how the teams have progressed as much since then. But I felt like Laval was 100% a step above both Bridgeport and Hartford and was definitely at the level of Providence. So I'd love to see them in that match. I was really looking forward to these Utica games for exactly that reason, because Utica is always a strong team. But with that potentially not happening, hopefully next week, or I think it's in 2 weeks, but if not, we'll see. I believe that the fact that they've been able to be behind in games and come back to be victorious and also have taken leads early and held those leads is the best way to measure the talent, is that they can finish games and they can close down games. And that are two of the most important factors for a hockey team, because that builds confidence in all areas of the game. You're not going to go into the playoffs being scared that you can't close out a small lead or that you can't come back from a large deficit and you can't win a playoff series if you're thinking that way. If you know in your heart that there's no lead that's insurmountable, I don't think it necessarily matters how good the team you're playing is, because you have the confidence that you can do it. So they're going to have confidence against anyone, and I think that's the biggest thing from the season that they're gaining.
Absolutely. And yeah, good call on Laval there. I completely had a brain fart and forgot about Laval, who's about to get an amazing player from college that we'll talk about later. But yeah, that Laval Providence series and Laval Henderson, those would be games that would be appointment viewing right there.
Mm-hmm.
That would be fun. Now, Jack, we got to let you go because we got 2 other teams to talk about in this division. But but yeah, hey, it's been a good 20-ish minutes talking Providence with you, and you are always welcome back on the program. Jack, tell the people where they can find your work, my friend.
Yeah, so I'm at the Sin Bin, and my Twitter handle is at SinBin AHL Bruins. And I live tweet every game I cover, and then I do a recap that goes up next day. Also hoping to get more into non-recaps, but I really love doing the recaps because I like to be able to tell the action from my point of view and use some good verbiage in that. So put my journalism degree to some good use. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me on that handle anytime. You can also reach me at Murray_Jack_, which is my professional Twitter account that is not associated with the Sin Bin, but I still promote my content from the Sin Bin with. So either of those handles, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be glad to talk to you guys. And I'd love to come back on the podcast whenever you want me.
Awesome. Great to hear. Jack, you have a good rest of your evening. Thanks again for coming on the program. Can't thank you enough, especially reaching out to you day of. And we will talk P Bruins again soon. How's that sound?
Sounds great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome, man. You have a good one.
You too.
Jack Murray from the sinbin.net. And yeah, we're going to take a quick pause and go into Hartford and Bridgeport. Okay, we've talked about the Providence Bruins. Let's talk about the Hartford Wolfpack as we go towards the bottom of the Atlantic Division here. Now, I always thought Hartford was in for a tough season. I know we were both very bullish on Providence and not so much with the Wolfpack and the Bridgeport Sound Tigers, who we will get to here in a second. But yeah, I always thought that they were in for a tough season, and I know you echoed the same sentiment, Sean.
Yeah, and I think some of that too is that the Rangers seem to be content keeping top prospects in the NHL and then playing them third line minutes. I mean, I don't understand that approach to player development, but okay. I mean, Capo Caco and Lafreniere have both struggled this season. They're playing third line minutes. I still will stand by this take that Capo Caco should have been in Hartford last season for at least a portion of it. And David Quinn is clearly struggling to balance ice time and development. And now he has Kravtsov to juggle there as well. And his refusal to send the kids down to develop in the AHL where they could be getting 20 minutes of ice time a night instead of like, hey, what if you got 13 or less? Wouldn't that be great? But yeah, that was one of the reasons I thought they were going to struggle is the Rangers' refusal to send down guys to get who are young, who still are developing to play big minutes in the AHL instead of, sticking them for third and fourth line minutes and limited power play time. Like that doesn't make any sense. But Hartford had some guys that we thought would be good depth pieces, but they sure haven't found depth scoring. I mean, Hartford's offense right now is Brodzinski, Barron, and Tyroning. A lot of guys for them have just not worked out. Will Cooley is someone who, he was a goal scorer throughout juniors, and he was, at bare minimum, someone who was going to put pucks on the net. He had 200 shots on goal in 62 games in juniors. He doesn't have a shot on goal in his last 4 games. Wow. He doesn't have 3 shots on goal in a single game this season. He hasn't scored a goal in 6 games, and when I see him on film, he looks bad. He's chasing hits, overly physical, and just looks slow. And while he never was going to be a speedster flying around the rink and, turning corners on defensemen, he really just does not look engaged or like he's mentally locking into his decision and not reading plays. And I don't think that that's something that has been really coached out of him very well. I mean, I'm not saying that the coaches in Hartford haven't tried, but they certainly haven't been effective, and he has been very ineffective. On the same plane as Anthony Greco. I mean, he started to pick it up a bit recently, but he still has 0 goals on 35 shots. And this is a guy 2 seasons ago that scored 30 and then scored 29 the year before that. So it's not like he's a fluke, 30 goal scorer like Jonathan Chichu was. Like, this is a dude who isn't maybe a sniper, but can very much shoot. He's still an amazing skater, but there are times in which he just looks lackadaisical and like he doesn't have the puck control that he used to have, which is weird because that's not a skill that should fade with age as much as it is just practice, being in the flow of the game and that kind of thing. And we talked earlier about Providence and their ability to kind of stay in the flow of the season with games being this spread out for them, whereas other teams are playing 3 and 4 and getting, game after game after game. And maybe that's been the difference between Providence and Hartford is their ability to kind of keep their players in that flow of the season and still feel like they're, showing up for work every day, even though games are few and far between. Whereas Hartford, for the most part, definitely has not had that feel for them. Last guy I wanted to touch on here, at least in the negative sense, is Patrick Kodorenko. This is someone who I thought could step in and be that second line center for the Wolfpack. And he's had flashes of good work. There are good moments I see him battling for pucks along the wall, making small detailed plays, getting pucks out, making continuation plays on the cycle. But at some point, those little moments are not good enough when like you're not creating chances. You're not putting pucks in the net, or even in some cases on the net. Like you're doing little things right, but you're not putting big pieces in. I always think of the analogy of when you have a jar that needs rocks, pebbles, and sand, you put the rocks in first, then you put the pebbles in, then you put the sand in. That's how it all fits in the jar. He has the sand and some pebbles in, and then there are just the big rocks that don't have room anymore, it seems like. And I know that that's not a perfect analogy, but that's what it looks like to me when I see him play.
Just out of sorts, out of place, backwards.
Doing little things well, but not doing big things well. Yeah. But some guys are starting to show some signs of life. Vincent Laverde, Darren Radish, they've been better recently, but given that we're almost halfway done with the season, or a little over halfway done with the season for them, like, yeah, it's great that they're starting to finally come on now, but God. And I mean, if this were a normal length, 76 game season for them, yeah, the fact that they took the first 12 games to really get moving, I mean, the first 12 games are like, you're in November. That's nothing. Whereas now it's like, Jesus, this half of the season is already over, and like we're just getting warmed up and maybe starting to move our legs a little bit.
Right.
Like, and it was always going to be that way, I guess. There were always going to be teams and players that struggle with this, and it is Hartford. And their goaltending has been a committee effort, and only Hushka and Kincaid have really been good. Tyler Wall has had one good game against Providence, and he was really the reason the Wolfpack stole that game. The rest of the time, he's been bad. And some of it is the defense in front of him. I mean, being a goalie is more than just stopping the pucks. It's also the chances you face and, what you're good at defending and what, the chances your team gives up. If you're great at reading the rush, but aren't good at finding low to high pucks off the cycle, but your team doesn't give up rush chances and that's what they give up, well, then you're screwed as a goaltender. But I don't think that's the case here, at least in large. Yes, the defense has not been great in front of him and left him hang out to dry a few times. But at some point as a professional goalie, you got to make saves on high danger chances. You got to make saves on medium danger chances. And he's just not. Like, yeah, the goals he's been given up by and large have been high and medium danger chances. But at some point, you've got to stop at least 80% of those pucks. And he's not even doing that.
Yeah, that's not good.
I will say Huska has looked better than Wall, which isn't saying a whole lot, but he's been good. Hopefully the Rangers can keep Shesterkin and Georgiev healthy so that Keith Kincaid can play taxi squad token goaltender and Huska can actually get in games in Hartford instead of, finding the comfy chair in the MSG press box.
Yeah, that's not going to do anybody any good. And, like I've mentioned before, and I'll mention 100 times again, the NHL parent clubs need to keep their goaltenders fresh so that they're not just rotting away on the taxi squad. You got to rotate them out either down to the NHL or down to the AHL rather, or up to the NHL. So,
and the Rangers have at least been trying to kind of sort of do that. But the one goalie they keep moving around that I don't understand, because it's not like they're invested in his development or whatever, is Keith Kincaid. Like, if Keith Kincaid sits on the taxi squad or, occupies the press box for a good portion of the season, like, they're not invested in his future. They know what he is. He's an old grizzled veteran that they're paying a minimum salary to. Like, cycle your kids, your young guys, your prospects, guys who could be somebody. We know who Keith Kincaid is. I don't see the need to be shuffling him around.
It's like the Colorado organization picking up Jonas Johansson. They're not invested in him. They're invested in Hunter Miska and Adam Warner. So they're going to get the reps down with the Eagles. And Jonas Johansson, he backed up one game up in Colorado, and don't be surprised if Colorado goes and makes a move to get another goaltender so that, they actually have a legit backup instead of an AHL starter.
Yeah. And I mean, in terms of, warm-bodied NHL goaltenders, he's very well suited for that. But like, I feel like that's what Kincaid is. And they've kind of tried to use him in other ways, and I don't get that. But anyway.
Yes. Anyway, last but not least, or maybe, yes, okay, last and least, let's talk about the Bridgeport Sound Tigers. And we go from one goaltending struggle by committee to another with Bridgeport. Now, Skarek has at least looked good in short stretches this season. He's on the Islanders right now for who knows how long, and that leaves the cupboards incredibly bare in his absence. I mean, CJ Mott, I remember seeing him with the Quad City Mallards when they were still around, and the Allen Americans after that in the ECHL. Ken Appleby? Yeesh. I mean, random Corey Schneider appearances, I guess, are going to continue for a time being, but I imagine that doesn't go for very long. In regards to the skaters, Bolduc has been a bright spot with his development. I was kind of concerned that his offensive production wouldn't carry over as he's not that dynamic, but he has good raw tools. He's been impressive so far this season. The rest of the blue line has just been bad, though. Mostly they need to stop teeing up shots from the points, plural, really. We've said it on this podcast since the beginning that you don't create sustainable offense from point shots. You got to get inside a home plate and really, get in that net front area. Now, case in point, Sound Tigers defensemen not named Bolduc have taken a combined 80 shots on goal. They have one combined goal on those 80 shots.
Not great, Bob.
Not great, Bob. The evidence speaks for itself. The veteran depth has been ineffective too. A guy I'm familiar with, AJ Greer. I expected him to hopefully flourish and, get an opportunity with Bridgeport to step his game up. He scored his first goal of the season earlier this week. And I don't know if he's battling injuries or not, but he just hasn't looked like the AJ Greer that you saw last season with the Eagles. It was his first game I felt like I actually noticed his play and didn't have to rewind to find his shifts. It's only one game, but I certainly hope he's shaken whatever injury or woes have taken his respectable top 6 production and put it here. It's disheartening to see the, quality of player that he was in Loveland and up with the Avalanche, for a cup of coffee here and there. It's just, I don't want to be too negative about the Bridgeport Sound Tigers because they're probably feeling it themselves in that locker room. So we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. And it's one thing where it's, we're trying to say there have been some positives. Bolduc has been good. Skarek has intermittently looked okay-ish. But like when you're a team with that record, you have to know that bad things are going to be said about you, and you've kind of earned that right. I mean, same thing with Hartford. Like when your record looks like that, you can't expect us to come out here and be like, but they've been so good. I don't get that's not how you lose games.
No. Well, we have a Friday game from that Atlantic division, the Groundhog Day division. Sorry, I called it by the proper name. Should call it by the Groundhog Day division. 1 p.m. on Friday, Eastern Daylight Time, Hartford and Bridgeport. I'll pick first. I'm going to say Hartford. Just, just everything that we've just said. I mean, it could be just a coin flip, really.
I mean, for me, I feel like both teams are spinning the goaltender roulette wheel here, but I feel like Hartford's wheel at least has some more dependable spots on it so far. I'm going to take Hartford here. The model is on Hartford's. They're a 61.8% favorite here in this game, which is not that surprising given that Hartford has at least had moments where I feel like they've looked like the better team in games. I feel like Bridgeport, for a sustained stretch rather, is not.
Welcome back from the other side of the break. We have covered the Groundhog Day division, as we've so thusly dubbed it, the Atlantic division, with all 3 of its teams. And now we're shifting over to the North division. And once again, friend of the program, bringing her back on to talk about the Syracuse Crunch. She hosts Syracuse Speaks, her own podcast, and writes for the sinbin.net. And Syracuse Speaks is also hosted by the sinbin.net. So once again, our former stomping grounds. I mean, they've got a lot of talent over there, a lot of AHL talent too. So can you blame us? We're bringing back Alexandra Ackerman. Alex, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much.
You bet. So, Sean, you made a little bit of a meme talking about how anemic, as it were, and robust the streakiness rather of the Syracuse Crunch has been in February and March? Is that correct?
Yeah, it is now, in fact, April. I know it seems like this season is just flying by while simultaneously also taking forever.
Correct.
It's a weird, timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly kind of effect. But our meme really tells the story of the Crunch so far this season. 1-7 in February, 6-1 in March. What do you think, Alex, is behind this complete turnaround? Is it all Barry Boulay and Gemel Smith, or is there something more deeply underlying the surface there?
Well, I very much hope it's not Smith since he's no longer with the team. So let's hope it wasn't just him. The Tampa Bay Lightning recalled him to the taxi squad. So unfortunately, Syracuse will be without his services. He only got 3 games in. But it was good to have him back while he was with the Crunch. You know, I think he was definitely an influence. But I think that the other players that Syracuse has gotten back will also be able to pitch in and help keep the team rolling. Syracuse, it's really strange. March has been, for as long as I can remember, really even dating back to like 2008, March has been a really strong month for the team. And the affiliation hasn't really mattered. Although, especially during the Lightning era, it seems like the second half of the season is really when the team gets going. And I'm not sure if it's those looming playoffs during, normal seasons or what it is about March. But for some reason, March just seems to be a catalyst for the team to start figuring things out and really kind of buckling down and getting it all together. So Syracuse welcomed back their captain, Luke Witkowski. He was out for a little while. He has returned to the lineup during the month. And I think the bigger returnee, to be honest with you, was Daniel Walcott. He has played for the last month. And I think that when he is on the ice, the team just feels different. They feel more confident. He allows players to play with the open space that he can create just because he is more of a physical guy. And that leadership aspect, he is very well liked in the dressing room. That much is really, really obvious. Syracuse, even when he was injured, 2 seasons ago, he was still in the dressing room. He was still kind of being that hype guy. He was around. So the Crunch is really fond of him. And thankfully, the Lightning is also fond of him too. So I think the return of Daniel Walcott has been really big just for team morale and kind of getting maybe some of that glue back together that they were missing when he wasn't in the lineup. And, certainly having a playmaker like Barry Boulay back is huge because that is definitely something that Syracuse has been missing with him being up with the Lightning. So I'm sure that has not hurt, but I have to hold out hope that it's more than just, those 2 guys, especially because with the way the Lightning is going through players, who knows how long Barry Boulay will even be with the Crunch.
And it's funny too, like I'm so used to at this point when I see, taxi squad moves or call-ups or wherever. And throughout most of the rest of the season, it's just been kind of taking the Ron Burgundy approach of, I don't believe you. Like that guy will be back in like a day or so. But I guess with Syracuse and Tampa being, the entire East Coast apart, there is at least probably some likelihood that, he's not just going to pop down there for a day and then come back. Whereas like Anaheim and San Diego have been passing guys back and forth as well as, throw a dart at the Pacific Division. Texas and Dallas have done the same. Hershey
Colorado.
has been, Colorado, Hershey and Washington have, worn the I-81 path between the two of them completely, dry. But Syracuse and Tampa don't really have that benefit because they are that far apart. So when you see Gemel Smith go down to Tampa, he's not coming back, the next day. But it is good to hear.
Probably not.
It is good to hear that they're kind of forming that bond and that March is starting to turn it around. What has been surprising though has been goaltending. Cece, why don't I let you take over that one?
No worries, man. Now, in regards to the net minding crew, I still struggle with the Crunch because I feel like they insist on playing Samuel Montembeault, and I just cannot bring myself to feel good about that. Now, help may be on the way though, as the other half of Syracuse's dual affiliation, the Florida Panthers, they signed their 2019 first round 13th overall pick, goaltender Spencer Knight. He's currently on their taxi squad with the $10 million man and a good starting goalie rounding out the active roster. Philippe DeRosier is on the taxi squad already, presumably serving as the token taxi squad goaltender as he's played exactly 0 games. Now, do you think the crunch could end up with one of DeRosier or Knight? Because I've noticed, especially NHL, AHL affiliations in the majority, they seem to be rotating goaltenders to try and get them at least starting a few games, either at the NHL or the AHL level, to kind of keep them fresh and to, just get them some games under their belt in this very strange season. So, Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, the Lightning just recently did a similar rotation to what you were just talking about. Christopher Gibson, who was supposed to be the Crunch's number one, but, taxi squad things. He came down for a couple of games, and Spencer Martin went up and was the de facto taxi squad goaltender with the Lightning for it's like a week and a half, I think, is really all it amounted to. And I think they've made that switch back. According to the AHL, Spencer Martin is still not on Syracuse's roster, but I think that's probably a quarantine travel issue more so than anything, because I'm fairly positive that the switch happened. And worst case scenario, the Crunch does have goalie Tyler Johnson, not forward Tyler Johnson, in the wings if they need a random backup. So they'll be fine there, but the whole quarantine travel thing is definitely still something I think we're kind of feeling our way through as far as how long it takes players to get through. But I could definitely see something going on there. Coach Grew is very strange with his goalies, and I've always felt that the rhyme or reason to who he chooses to kind of run the table with goaltending it kind of bucks your traditional thinking. Like sometimes he will go with the hot hand, and sometimes, he'll let a goaltender kind of play until they start losing and then he replaces them. But other times he just gets it into his head that like one guy is going to do better than the other, and he'll just play them come hell or high water. We kind of saw that at the beginning of the season when Montembeault went through that like 7-game streak where Syracuse just wasn't playing well and he kept losing. So his rhyme or reason with goaltending is something that I have never really figured out. And I kind of suspect it's more of an organizational thing, because the cupboard in the Lightning organization is very bare. There's not a lot of talent there. There's not a lot of ready talent there. There is not another Andrei Vasilevsky hanging out in the wings waiting to be discovered, I feel like. So, with the way that they've handled goaltenders in the past, the way that they've kind of rotated through every single season, Syracuse has a new pairing. It's really annoying as a fan and as someone who covers the team to watch that, because there's no consistency. There's no gel. There's no groove. It's a brand new season. So of course Syracuse has new goalies. Why wouldn't they? So it's very strange. And I think that Spencer Knight is someone to be excited about. I know that one of my old writing partners over at Raw Charge, Hardev Lad, is extremely high on Spencer Knight. And he was actually telling me how that would be a prospect that he would love to steal from the Panthers organization if, the Lightning wasn't in cap hell every single season and had the space. So I do think that it would be great if he could get some playing time in Syracuse. I think he would kind of fit in really well and be able to slot in and get some good minutes. But as to what Coach Ben will do, I don't know.
I mean, it's a rare occasion. He's actually spoiled for choice. I mean, you've got not one but two NHL teams that you're able to pick goaltenders from. So I know that there's a lot of limited factors that go into that in regards to the head coach and what his say is in that regard. But hey, if there's one thing the dual affiliation has helped out with, it is the fact that, now you've got options and, you don't have to be just completely bare bones. If, a goaltender or two gets hurt, now you've got Florida's prospects as well that could potentially step in.
One of the things that I think is interesting here, and I don't know if this is the case with how the Crunch operate, is in a lot of other organizations, I know for sure that it's not the head coach who picks starting goaltenders. It's the goalie coach. Basically, the head coach will be like, all right, who's playing tonight? And the goalie coach will be the one that makes that determination. Like, yes, the head coach still, I guess, has veto power or something, but for the most part, that decision is left up to the goaltending coach. In Syracuse, the goaltending coach would be Joe Palmer. And I'm curious if you've ever gotten any indication that it was Palmer's choice and that's why we see some randomness, or if it's kind of a discussion between Palmer and Grew, or if it's Grew picks and Palmer just, works on the technique and training and really doesn't have a say in deciding starts.
This is hard because before Palmer, we had Carl Gehring and but my gut feeling is that Coach Ben is not necessarily someone to leave major decisions up to other people. I think that he has his fingers in the pot somehow. I am sure that he takes Palmer's advice. And, now that Palmer has at least, I think, a season, I think last season was his first with Syracuse after Gehring left for his dream job back with his alma mater in North Dakota. So I'm sure that he can trust him a little bit more now that he's been in the AHL and he has some more experience under his belt and is more used to how Grew does things. But my gut feeling is that Ben has his fingers in there somewhere. I don't really know. We haven't heard a whole lot from Palmer. I'm not exactly sure why. I know when Gehring was with Syracuse, he was doing interviews fairly regularly, where Palmer, I feel has been not as visible as some of the other coaching staff members have. So I'm not sure why that is, but yeah, it's a little bit of a different situation, I think, than it was with Gehring, who was a known name in the league. He had been a goalie coach both at the college level and at the professional level before, where Palmer kind of came in and this is his real first big gig. So my guess is, like I said, that Ben has his say and that, maybe they have a conversation. But yeah, it's still a little bit of a mystery to me as to what Palmer would be seeing, just like you were saying, Sean, and CC over, the other goalies and how that's working out. Because Coach Grew had no problem, or Palmer had no problem running with Spencer Martin last season. So what has changed this season?
Yeah, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot exactly like that, but it's just kind of an interesting thing to see that balance too. And I imagine that there's probably some limited availability for Joe Palmer, as he's also their video coach, which I know is a very time-intensive job, as well as, I imagine there's probably not a ton of demand for him to take requests for doing interviews. He also might just not want to, and COVID protocols probably is something along the lines of hey, the less people we have to, do runarounds with, the better. Mm-hmm. But let's get to the actual matchup here, as we do have a weekend series in this division, in this half of a division, a sub-conference, because this is really two divisions. This is Groundhog division in the Atlantic, and then this is Groundhog's Day 2 Electric Boogaloo. The North is two divisions. I don't know why they didn't make it that way, but whatever. It's arbitrary. Anyway, we have a weekend matchup here against Rochester. And as for this matchup, not much has changed with these two teams' approach to the game. And Rochester head coach Seth Appert has said that they're not going to make big adjustments that are outside their identity. That's not something he believes in, which I can go back and forth with, but that's beyond the point. But the chances that the Mercs become a trapping, physically grinding team are basically zero. So I'd say that the keys to the weekend here are, number one, don't take penalties. Rochester has the league's best power play. They've scored a power play goal in 4 of 5 against the Crunch. They've scored 2 power play goals in 3 of 5, while Syracuse has outscored Rochester 5 on 5 in 4 of 5. That's a lot of 5s. But watching their power play, it looks like it should work, and it just doesn't. Do you have any thoughts as to when Syracuse actually gets to go on the power play here, as to why that's not seemed to be clicking for them?
I think the lack of the scoring, the talent, has had something to do with that, just because for a long time Syracuse was missing playmakers like Barry Boulay. Otto Sampi has taken on a lot of responsibility onto his shoulders this season, which I keep saying this, and I probably need to stop at this point in time, but he was not one of the headlines I was anticipating for this season. I feel like he's kind of come out of nowhere, which is fantastic. He's really taking advantage of the extra minutes and the trust that the coaching staff is placing in him. But he hasn't really had those talented partners to kind of be able to work with. And so I think with Barré-Boulet back, that should definitely change. And I'm sure that he will be seeing a lot of power play time. I also absolutely agree that, Syracuse needs to stop it with the penalties. And it's sort of broken record town on that one too. It's like Groundhog's Day in that area, because we say that every single season, I feel like, when I'm talking to people, and it's always the penalties. And, yes, some of that is the way Syracuse plays. They play that high risk, high reward game that generally does lead to more turnovers, which then you're chasing and you're on your heels and you're reacting and you're getting the penalties. And, but like the neutral zone stuff that Syracuse keeps getting into trouble with, that's got to stop. Some of the physical things, even, there's leaders on the team that are taking penalties at really bad times. There have been a couple of times in my recent memory where Syracuse has scored a goal. They have all of the momentum. Someone takes a penalty that's not really necessary, and then they end up losing all of that. And worst case scenario, the other team scores on the power play, and then you've lost everything that you had built. So I absolutely agree that they need to cut that out and really try to stay at least 5-on-5, if not 5-on-4.
Yeah, and that's, when we talked about Utica in their previews, that technically, I guess, never happened. I don't really know how that works. That basically this entire subdivision here plays 5-on-4. Like, they're one of the highest penalized teams and penalty drawing teams in the league. Like, I want to say Utica, Rochester, and Syracuse were all in the top 5 of penalties drawn per game and penalties taken per game. I think Syracuse might have been slightly outside the top 10 and taken, but like, this is these are games between the three of them that are going to be played 5-on-4. And the fact that literally none of them can kill a penalty to save their lives, like, that's quite a testament. And it makes these games fun. Moving on, though, I will say the second key to this weekend is got to be to win the transition battle. These are two teams that play a very similar style of, they want to go create turnovers at the blue line and then go north-south right away. They want to generate odd man rushes, and they don't desire to trade chances, but they absolutely will if they have to. And that has been kind of the theme of these and has been made them very fun games to watch. But they have to, whoever executes on turnovers, gets those passes north-south as soon as possible, gets wingers to fly the zone and gets pucks to them. That's going to be the team that wins, this weekend series, in my estimation, outside of the penalty taking thing, and hope that you don't get Tim Peel calling makeups.
Ooh, ouch. Well, setting the table quite nicely for our picks. And Friday night, 7:05 at Rochester. Saturday, 7 p.m. sharp. Well, probably not sharp, because we all know how hockey games work. Anyway, Saturday at 7 p.m. in Syracuse. Alex, be our guest, put our picks to the test. Yes, that was completely impromptu, and I regret my decision immediately. Alex, go ahead and choose who you got for the weekend.
I'm going to say that the Crunch splits the weekend. I'm going to say, that they've been playing really hot lately. They have some of the roster together. Things are doing okay, but they have had to make just a very recent adjustment. Defenseman Ben Thomas got called up just today. The Lightning is having some blue line injury issues, so they have lost a defenseman. And for some reason, whenever the defensemen especially seem to be out of balance, whenever there's any kind of shift with the blue liners, things get a little sticky. And I'm not sure if it's going to take Syracuse maybe a game to kind of adjust without Ben Thomas in the lineup. As much as I like to kind of rag on him, he is 4th on the team in scoring with 8 points. He's only 2 behind Otto Sampi's 10 points. So, he has been doing good things, and he has been out there as a solid defensive veteran. As much as that I died a little on the inside to say that, but yeah. So I do think it's going to take Syracuse a game to kind of adjust and sort of fix that sort of blown tire over there that's just gone. So I'm going to say they're going to split the weekend, and that there is going to have to be a little bit of adjusting going on because they do have some gaps that they didn't previously have, and again, they just lost Jamel Smith too. So that's another adjustment the team's going to have to make. So I'm going to go with splitting the weekend.
Okay. Sounds very logical. And gosh, I have to agree with you, Alex, because I just feel like, Syracuse is due. I mean, with everything that you just said, but I just feel that they're kind of at that point where they're due for a loss. They had such a successful March, and now with, Rochester coming back in and getting rest with all these cancellations and things like that. Well, I guess both teams are, I suppose, but yes, I'm going to say Rochester on Friday and Syracuse on Saturday.
I would like to present the other side here. Rochester appears to be reeling. They have lost, I think, their last 3 in a row. They haven't played that much, too, as Utica is, just deciding to take that month-long vacation right in the middle of the season. I mean, but Syracuse is taking off. They've been hot recently through the month of March. Their PDO is through the roof. Their rolling PDO is absolutely astronomical right now. And if I've learned anything from watching Henderson, you can ride on that for a little bit. Barry Boulay is also in town right now still. And a lot of top Americans like Fogarty and D are not. Now, I know that can change for Buffalo and Rochester at the drop of the hat, but they're not there right now. And Buffalo at least seems to be trying to put them in games. Fogarty scored his first NHL goal the other day. So I think they might stick around. All of that comes together for me to say, I'm taking Syracuse to sweep.
I shouldn't be as surprised as I am because, Sean, you pick sweeps a lot more readily than I do. So, but I mean, with Buffalo, it's like, oh, we just lost 17 games in a row. What? Let's try something different.
Good thing somebody bet on them to win the other night.
Yeah. Sean got it was good odds, and you got a good payout from that. I'm not going to disclose figures. We're not going to go into that.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. But you were on the winning end, so that was at least a good thing. So, well, those are our picks, and those that's what we've got going on for. Oh, how could I neglect the model? Sean, your model. What does it say about Syracuse and Rochester this weekend?
It likes Syracuse by a small but still reasonable margin. On Friday's game on the road, Syracuse a 56.7% favorite. That bumps up to a 57.2 when they are home on Saturday. So in terms of as far as hockey percentages go, that's a pretty decent favorite for Syracuse, but still Rochester a live shot.
Well, there you have it. Alex, thanks for coming on the program once again. And I know I said it at the top of this segment, but where can the people, the general public, the hockey-loving fans of the world find your work?
It's mostly over at the Sin Bin, and you can find my hockey Twitter is at Sin Bin Crunch. My podcast is Syracuse Speaks. It's available on all of the major platforms. It's hosted by Anchor, so you can find it there. It's on Google Play, it's on Apple, it's on Stitcher, it's on all of those things. My personal Twitter, if you're more of a teacher, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, geek nerd type person, is at Alovimo, and you can find me over there if you seem to be interested in any of those things. I do talk about the Crunch as well on there, but I also tend to get off on tangents like what Rochester's arena is playing on the radio and, just kind of a little bit lighter than I can be over on at Sin Bin Crunch. So those are the places you can find me. And if you're in the Finger Lakes, you could also find me in the most recent issue of the Interlaken Review, which was something that was a little bit of a surprise this morning to have my principal point out to me. So yeah, fun times.
I'm actually a subscriber. No, I'm not.
I was gonna say that's a lot that's a long way for that little tiny newspaper to travel.
Oh boy, Cece, that's a bit of a stretch, Oh man. Yeah. Alex, thanks for coming on once again. And my fellow Hufflepuff, as I came to find out just a week ago. Oh, as Sean rolls his eyes.
See, now that's the type of stuff you can find over on Alovimo.
There you go.
Yep. Hufflepuff pride, baby. Absolutely.
Well, Alex, have a great rest of your evening. And we appreciate you coming on the show always.
Thank you both very much. Have a great night.
Thanks. You do the same. Alexandra Ackerman from the sinbin.net covering the Syracuse Crunch. Sean, we got to get a little nerdy up in here occasionally. Come on now.
Yeah, but like, you know what? It's fine. I'm not going there. It's not.
Okay.
I did not win a quiz. We don't get to hear that rant some other day.
No, some other day. All right. Well, we are going to jump on over to the Pacific Division after we take a quick break. So after these messages, we will be right back. All right. And we are back from talking with Alexandra Ackerman from the Sin Bin, covering the Syracuse Crunch for them. And of course, her Syracuse Speaks podcast as well. And we were going to, we were going to cover the Colorado Eagles hosting the Bakersfield Condors for the first time this year.
Please address them by their appropriate title.
Oh, pardon me. Kingslayer. And I even was going to refer to Colorado, since they're a couple pegs down from the King. I was going to refer to them as the Dukes of Loveland. How does that roll off your tongue? I mean, it's the Pacific Division. I mean, you've already got the Ontario Reign with the royalty nod. You've got the Kingslayer. You've got the Silver Knights. I mean, Dukes of Loveland.
Yeah, this is that.
See, it's.
But now we can't because, something, COVID something.
And oddly enough, they also had an interesting little phrase there. It was due to roster restrictions or something like that. Here, let me go back and read. Due to roster constraints, verbatim, due to roster constraints and COVID-19 protocols. So it was both of them. Due to roster constraints has only been in one other game cancellation / postponement this year. And that was when Hartford and Bridgeport were supposed to play on March 6th. And it was regarding Hartford. So it said due to roster constraints for Hartford. And that's the only other time in all the cancellations and all the postponements that we've had this season, it was either due to COVID-19 protocol or out of an abundance of caution. So, and that's a bit of a head scratcher because Bakersfield has, wait for it, an ECHL affiliate that's active this season in Wichita with the Wichita Thunder. So what happened?
I mean, yeah, they have Wichita, but like, what's a bus ride from Wichita to Colorado to Bakersfield? Like, that's like, well, in theory, they could have postponed it to like a Wednesday, Thursday kind of thing, I guess. But like, I mean, we don't know what the exact situation is here, but yeah, like, yes, they have an ECHL affiliate, but I feel like how far away that affiliate is. And I mean,
in fairness, Wichita to Loveland, Colorado, not that far. Maybe 6 hours, 8 hours.
Oh, if it's that close, then yeah,
I know. Yeah, you could get some guys into Loveland by that time. But if you're making the call today, then if you have to quarantine or whatever. I mean, we talked about that, earlier in the show with Boldy. But anyway, so we're not covering Colorado and Bakersfield, the Dukes of Loveland versus the Kingslayer. So, alas, we will nix that for the show. Last but not least, let's head north of the border. Let's talk Stockton and Laval. But before we get into the preview here, we have to talk about the latest addition to the Rocket. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Cole Caulfield season.
Well, Canada, you're now playing for second place in this division. The hands down best team just got one of the best NHL prospects available. But don't worry, I'm sure the Canadians won't try and play him at center, then later trade him for a center. At least I'm pretty sure. 65% sure that isn't going to be what happens here. It's not like they have a history of that. That would be weird.
No, not at all.
I also want to preface this by saying I have felt personally victimized by Cole Caulfield as a card-carrying member of the Penn State Alumni Association. He has scored points in every game against Penn State except for one that he played in. So when I say that I have seen Cole Caulfield do bad things, I mean it. I have grown to hate Cole Caulfield, but I do respect the hell out of him. So let's talk about him. First, the good. First thing you have to know about Cole Caulfield is he can score a goal from basically anywhere. And I I've been known to be a bit hyperbolic when it comes to talk about prospect shooting ability, Kaliev and Bach, etc. I'm not going to mince words here. Caulfield is a better shooter than both of them. He is a human trick shot video. Second is he also has good playmaking vision. And while he is Han Solo and very much shooting first, he isn't a one-trick pony. He has good playmaking vision and has made a bunch of easy tap-ins for teammates at Wisconsin. Third, his defensive game isn't elite, but it's pretty good. He's shown in the last season that he's a capable back checker and doesn't just wait for the puck to leave the D zone so he can go have fun. He's certainly engaged in a more 200-foot game as a winger than you would normally see from guys who have those kind of gaudy point totals. Like, I'm not calling him a, future Selke trophy winner. Let's not go nuts, but like, he can play defense. The bad, while his skating is actually above average, he doesn't have burner speed. And that's normally not a deal breaker or even really too much of worth noting, but it's a non-ignorable part of me worries that with his skating, his size will have an impact that his otherwise insane talent level would cancel out. But I think if he put on like 10 to 12 pounds of muscle, we may not be having this conversation. But the fact that he is, small, even for hockey standards, he's a small player. The fact that he doesn't have that elite speed, even though he has very good speed and very good edge work and has all of those other hockey skills, it at least concerns me a little bit how he adjusts to playing in pro hockey. Like, yes, college is a big and physical man's game, but it's still a different speed at pro hockey, AHL, and eventually NHL levels. I'm not terribly concerned because he's still Cole Caulfield, and the things I've seen him do, I absolutely am positive that will translate to a long and fruitful pro career. And we've talked about, the restraints of being a smaller player in pro hockey and why they don't move up as frequently, some of which is bad front office management of small guy can't play. That's how Cole Caulfield made it to 15th overall to begin with.
Yep.
Yeah, that should never have happened. But small guy bad, big guy good is not something that has quite evacuated front offices in the NHL, unfortunately.
Yep. Caulfield signed his 3-year NHL entry-level contract with the Canadiens last weekend. And now, like you said, is going to be with the Laval Rocket. And another side note that I think was since the Eagles were brought up before we started talking about Caulfield, Boston College jersey that Sean has on right there for the program. There we go. Alex Newhook got his ELC signed with the Avalanche, and he has been relegated to the Eagles. So maybe see him play when COVID-19 restrictions aren't canceling and postponing games for Colorado. But anyway, continuing on with Laval and Stockton, Shawnee, let's talk about this matchup.
Yeah, Stockton has had a wild ride of a season from a PDO perspective. It's been a roller coaster for sure. They started the season after those first 2 games at a good old 85, a mark of which no team is that bad. I don't care who you are. Nobody's 85 bad. Then it went to a 103 as they rebounded from those 2 games to absolutely try and blast Toronto out of Canada. And then it came down to a reasonable 100. And now they're starting to go back up to a 102, which is weird given the games that I feel like I've watched. And when watching the film, though, it looks like they've had wild luck throughout the season. And that's not to say that there isn't underlying ability there, because that just ain't true. But they've had some games where maybe they aren't on it that night, which is fine, but the chances in the offense are still there. But the puck luck just isn't on their side. Or in the case against Toronto, 50% of the puck luck is not on their side, and they just can't get a save when they really need one. And that's going to happen. Mama said there would be days like this where Zagadulin, who's been an otherwise pretty good goaltender for them, just really did not play his best game. And I don't really feel like Garrick Sparks did that well either. He let up a couple bad ones in that Toronto series, and that's the difference. One thing I will say about Stockton is that their aggressive forecheck effectiveness that saw them just dummying teams earlier this season has been toned down a bit. And I don't think that's intentional. I don't know if teams are just becoming more effective at beating their first forechecker in that first wave of pressure, or if they've been toning it back intentionally to try and be more balanced or to try and be a little more conservative. I haven't been quite able to get to the bottom of it. I don't suspect it's intentional, though, and I think it's a part of the ebb and flow of, any given season. Some nights you're going to look better than others, but otherwise they've looked very much the same team as I've seen all season, just going through a bit of a dry spell. Their puck management hasn't been great this last couple games either. They've given up a couple goals off of just absolutely atrocious turnovers in their own end. But again, I think that some of it is part of the ebbs and flows of the season. Like, these games and those moments of just bad management will happen, but it's a difference of not confusing making bad mistakes with being an incompetent player.
And Sean, I also wonder how much Alex Petrovich being gone affects the locker room and their ability to really bounce back, from this dry spell. From all accounts, he was a good veteran leader in the room, and voices like that can certainly help uplift a team that, has luck or lack thereof bearing down on. It's just it's veteran leadership and, guys that know how to navigate those waters. I think that's invaluable.
It is, but I think what Petrovic brought in too is so many times you'll see like teams sign that grizzled veteran leader guy, but he's also like a 10th forward who doesn't contribute offensively and is maybe like a second unit penalty killer.
Sure.
But that wasn't Petrovic. Like, Petrovic was someone who was, first unit power play, leading the team in assists, quarterback the power play, was playing big minutes for them and doing well in those minutes, and was also a leader on that team and a veteran voice. Like, those are the veterans you strive to go and get in free agency, or that you try and bring into your organization for years on end, are the guys that are not just, a fourth line replaceable guy, but they're, everyone's buddy in the locker room and they say the right things. Like, you want guys that can do, tangible, contributable things on the ice while also being able to, take rookies under their wing, show them the ropes, show them the work ethic, the daily, grind that it takes to be pros. Like, you can have both. And Petrovic was a model of both of those from all accounts off the ice, and very visibly accounts on the ice. And hopefully for Stockton's sake, he comes back soon. Although, that's a toss up, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, you can't, you definitely can't, with the taxi squads and everything, you can't count on that,
especially with Calgary, like being right on the edge of, a playoff spot and really having to battle for it every night. Petro is a guy that seems like he's more likely than not going to be part of that team's plans, at least for this season, for Calgary going forward. So I think if I had to, try and read the tea leaves, and I'm sure on, the next episode when he's back in Stockton,
right.
That
Stockton Heat of Calgary.
Yeah, when he's back in the Stockton Heat of Calgary, that we will talk about how stupid I was for never learning my lesson of stop trying to predict roster moves. But here I am going to try and predict roster moves. I think if he does come back, it's not going to be for a while.
We've talked about the Stockton Heat of Calgary, as we mentioned. Now let's flip the script, and it's going to be Laval and everybody else now that Cofield is on the Rocket. Just bolstering a already intact roster that was not really affected by the CHL call-ups, quote unquote.
Do we have any read if is he already in Laval, or is he doing border crossing, quarantine, testing, nose swab things?
I'm imagining that that's the case. I mean, he did sign his ELC last weekend, so I don't know if he'll be ready for the games this weekend, but hell, let me check the AHL transactions
there's like
list.
A picture of him signing, and if there's like a Laval thing in the background, or if it's like over Zoom or something. While I talk about Laval here. So on the opposite side, Laval has been pretty even keel when it comes to puck luck, whereas Stockton has been all over the place. And I mean, they're on a short PDO bender right now with a 104 in the 2-week rolling charts. But they've otherwise been around or under 100 the whole season. which is terrifying. The idea that Laval has been rolling this smoothly and playing this fast and loose and has maybe been a bit unlucky and are now getting Cole Caulfield. That's why I said, good luck, Canada. The rest of you are playing for second place. But I will say there are three things, and I mean, we've talked about Laval in depth quite a few times, what they do well, where they've struggled. Spoiler, they forecheck really well. They roll three lines really well. A fourth line that's not as good as the other three, but their top nine is nasty. They skate hard. They play the system really well. Goaltending consistency has been a problem for them as they've gotten like league averages goaltending from two goalies that I feel like should have given them better than that, but they limit quality chances. Yeah, we've talked about Laval and what they do well, I feel like multiple times. So let's talk about what Stockton has to do to beat them. I think two things, and that sounds like a low number, but the two pretty big ones. Number one, Stockton has to stop this power play from going 0 for 2, 0 for 3. It's not getting it done. And that has been the case in this little mini skid that they've been on here, where they didn't even get a power play against Toronto in one game. They were 0 for 2, I want to say, in the other, and didn't score a power play goal against Belleville. That's not going to work. And Laval's PK is vulnerable. It's right around the middle of the league. And while we always expected Stockton's power play to come down to earth from, the 40% or whatever gaudy number that it was earlier on, I thought it wouldn't bottom. It would, bounce a little bit in the like mid to upper 20s, and it's now in the low 20s. They need to stop that streak from going. And to be completely fair to them, like, it's not like it's gone cold because they're doing something different or the chances just aren't there or they're not generating stuff with guys like Pospisil gone or Glenn Gaudin kind of bouncing in between, Calgary and Stockton, Calgary. They're generating chances. It's just those pucks aren't going in. And I don't have a good answer other than put the puck in the net. I know that's great analysis, but they need to score on the power play because that's one of the only opportunities that Laval is going to give them where they are at a clear offensive advantage. Second big thing, they need to execute breakouts out of their own zone. As Manitoba learned last week and Stockton learned in their earlier series, Laval is the best team in the AHL in converting turnovers in the D zone into goals. It's what sank the ship in Manitoba the other night when they blew a 3-1 lead in the third period. Laval's forecheck just decided, now we're going to win this game, and then forced a turnover that led directly to the game-winning goal. But if you're going to beat Laval, you have to execute breakouts in your own zone. You have to make smart decisions with the puck, and you need to make those smart decisions fast. Otherwise, that forecheck will murder you. You cannot, get the puck, take a good 3 steps and not expect Blandisi or Wheel or Harvey Pinard to be right on top of you. Like, that's not how Laval works at all. Cece, have I stalled long enough for you to find if Cole Caulfield is in French Canada?
Yes, you have. Quarantined in his hotel room in Montreal. Forward Cole Caulfield learned on Thursday that he was officially one of the 3 finalists for the Hobey Baker Trophy. He was also presented virtually on Zoom to his new Laval Rocket teammates in the morning during a team meeting. He's in quarantine, but that doesn't mean we can't start working with him, head coach Joël Bouchard said in a video conference on Thursday. So, yes, he is quarantining, and officially as of March 28th, he has been loaned to the Laval Rocket by the Montreal Canadiens. And thank you very much to Le Journal de Montréal for that little snippet there.
Let's hope Google Translate didn't lose anything for you.
Yes, I did have to translate that because it was all in French.
Nope, yeah. I know.
Oh, yep. So yeah, those were the 3 things. You said all 3? I thought you were only on number 2.
Nope, I only had 2.
Oh, I thought
I did say I had 3.
There's
I was told there would be no math.
There's 3 kinds of people in this world: people who can count and Sean O'Brien. So there you go.
Can I program 3,500 lines of complex code to calculate a point shares model? Yep.
Can I? Right. Maths are hard for Sean, but boy, can he rock that R for sure. As someone who doesn't know what the hell R really is, but anyway. All right. Well, hey, we've got our picks. Friday, 7 p.m. at Laval. Sunday, 7 p.m. at Laval. A rare Friday Sunday series. It's usually Friday Saturday or Saturday Sunday, I feel. But anyway,
Canada seems to be doing these weird splits where they do Friday Sundays. I've seen them a couple times, but I don't know. Maybe it's Saturdays are for poutine. I couldn't tell you.
I mean, why not? It's delicious. Sean, I'm gonna go first, and I'm gonna pick. I'm gonna pick a Laval sweep because, yeah, you can, and you probably can get away with it.
Like at some point, I have to imagine the magic ride of Laval just rolling teams is going to stop. Like
we keep saying this about Henderson, though, and it doesn't.
I mean, it literally took a Manitoba miracle for them to lose that game, like an really absolute miracle. Stockton looks like it's not on the ropes, but it's still in a funk. Ebbs and flows of the season, I'm not concerned about them, but like I got to take Laval to sweep here. Everything's clicking for them. They may have Cole Caulfield this weekend. Even if they don't, they just look so good.
And they're probably feeling really good with Caulfield going up there too. So it's like you're already playing well, and then you get this super highly touted prospect, and it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna get even better.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah. Well, what does the model have to say? I mean, it is only a model, but
surprisingly, the model is not as high on Laval. Like it still has Laval as a favorite, but I would have thought, given the woes of Stockton recently, and Laval just rolling teams, it would be like closer to 60%. But Laval, a very modest 54.2% favorite in each individual game.
That is pretty modest for Laval. Although Henderson was like 56, 57, 58. And they still swept the weekend.
And I think, as the sample for this season grows, we're starting to see a little more balance as, more games get put in, teams start to win and lose at a more reasonable rate. Like we knew that some of them weren't going, like we knew Binghamton, for example, wasn't going to be as bad as they were early on. We knew Stockton clearly wasn't going to be getting blown out 7-1 every game. Like as we start to see those ebb and flows, I think we're going to see, these percentages come to be more what's in line with what we're used to in the, mid 50s, occasionally a 60% or somewhere here and there. And very rarely something in the 70s, unless it's literally one team playing like a COVID riddled, injury bugged ECHL, half the roster kind of team.
Or Providence playing Bridgeport. Sorry. Low blow.
All right. Well, let's get loose here.
Oh, are we going to take a break first?
Oh, yeah, we do. But we're going to stretch during that break because after that, it's time for the speed round.
Yes. So listen to some advertisements. We shall return very shortly. All right. Time to round up the show. Time to finish her off. And first and foremost, it's a sprint to the finish line. We have got the speed round. All right. So who do we have in Texas and Iowa? Friday at Texas, Saturday at Texas. Sean, who do you got?
I have to believe that Iowa is going to rebound. They might get Matthew Boldy. I'm going Iowa Friday, and then I'm going to take Texas to bounce back Saturday.
I'm going to flip it. I'm going to say Texas on Friday, Iowa on Saturday. Tucson and Henderson, Friday, 7 p.m. at Tucson, Saturday, 7 p.m. at Tucson. Shawnee.
Henderson sweep. PDO train go. Woo!
I cashed in my ticket way too early and predicted a sweep against Henderson. Henderson sweep this weekend. All right, Saturday, Belleville at Ontario. Sean.
I'm taking Belleville here. They've looked a little bit better recently, and while Toronto's looked like they're on the upswing too, I'm taking Belleville.
And I said Belleville at Ontario. I meant Belleville at Toronto in Ontario, of course, because they're both there. I'm going to pick Toronto because Belleville is looking awful. Grand Rapids at Cleveland.
I'm going to go Monster here, even though I don't think Brad decent at all.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pick. I'm going to pick Cleveland. Wilkes-Barre Scranton at Lehigh Valley. Sean, who do you got?
I don't like any of the goalies involved who could be playing in this game, but Lehigh Valley has way better skaters in front of them. Lehigh Valley.
I'm going to pick Lehigh Valley as well. Rockford at Chicago. Sean.
Upset alert! I'm going Rockford.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to be the contrarian and pick Chicago. San Diego at Ontario. There it is. Ontario Reign. Sean.
San Diego's been on an upswing, but I'm starting to believe in Ontario.
I'm gonna buy into that upswing by San Diego. I'm gonna pick the goals. Last but not least, Binghamton at the Hershey Bears.
Bears.
Binghamton stinks. I'm gonna go Hershey.
And we did that all in one. Yeah.
Yes, we did. Yeah, there was a couple stumbles from me, but at least we could squeeze it in underneath 2 minutes that the clip is in. So, yeah, that is truly a sprint because, man, I'm worn out. I'm getting old, man. Oh, all right. Well, hey, that's it.
That is it for the show. If you guys are enjoying the show, please make sure to subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, please rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening to it from. Apple, if you're listening to it on, I think Stitcher does reviews. I don't think Google does. If you have one that you're listening to it on that does review things, please leave us a review. Those help other people find the show, as well as help us improve the show. If you're watching us on YouTube, like the video and leave a comment what you thought of the episode. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at the Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all of that and more can be found on our link tree, which is scrolling down below, which is linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. All the podcast links are up on front. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom on our link tree, you will find our social links to our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Cece, where can people find you?
Well, my name is Cece Hockley. You can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at FPC_AHL. That is, of course, our Full Press AHL account. There's also my personal Twitter account at CCHawk, SEESEEHAWK. Probably talk about hockey a good 75-80% of the time, but hey, I'll throw in a pro wrestling tweet, music tweet, anything that keeps me interested. I'm hoping it's not going to be bullshit for you. Check out my writing on the Full Press Coverage Network at www.fullpresshockey.com. And of course, the Calder Farmstead is part of the Full Press Radio Network. Check out our program, a lot of great other hockey podcasts, and a lot of great sports and sports entertainment shows at www.fullpresscoverage.com. Shawnee.
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SeanObrien81. I'm also on an ever-improving Instagram account at Sean O'Brien_81. You can find my stats work on Tableau. That's where we talk about, when we talk about PDO, the model, rolling PDO, point shares, all of that. That's all on my Tableau page. It gets updated weekly, sometime between Monday and Wednesday. Usually depends on my workload and how lazy I am. But you can find all of that at the following link, bit.ly/data dump and chase, all lowercase, all one word. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our awesome theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction, DYSFUNCTION, so he can make music for you too. Cece, take us home.
That'll do it for episode number 25. Quite a milestone for the Calder Farmstead podcast. For Sean O'Brien, I'm Cece Hockley. Thanks for coming on and listening to the show. Thanks for our guests, Alexandra Ackerman and Jack Murray, both of the Sinbin.net. And last but not least, as always, keep your stick on the ice.